Everybody knows you're on, we're on live this evening, so this is a live show. So I'll behave myself. I'd like to call this meeting to order of the Common Council, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And Karen will do a blessing.
Father God, we come to you this evening just thanking you for this wet, beautiful day. And we thank you for the opportunity to come and discuss and make good decisions for the community of Brazil. I pray that what we do this day would be pleasing to you and that it would be acceptable for everyone to make good resolutions. We just give you all the praise and glory, and we ask these things in Jesus' holy name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Karen. All right, next on our agenda is roll call. Karen Bowes.
Present.
Shane Litz.
Present.
Stephen Bell.
Present.
Brad Deal.
Here.
And Angela Morrison.
Here.
Karen McQueen, our clerk treasurer, is here this evening, along with Lou Britton, our city attorney, and myself. Our next item is the approval of minutes, and that would be from February the 11th, 2026.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
We have a motion on the floor by Karen to approve those minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Shane. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Our next, usually at this time, we have audience comments. What I'd like to do is move that down a little bit. And we've got a couple things on reviewing regulations on splitting property. Ken Meadows tax abatement request for that's here this evening. I'd like for you to do your presentation, and then we'll have audience comments. Okay? So at this time, we'll go to reviewing regulations on splitting property. Angie, do you
Yeah.
want to take it from here?
Yeah,
On that subject?
I've had some realtors and some other people come to me about new regulations that ended up as not new. It's just something that has started. And it's about having a plat done every time you want to split a piece of property in the city of Brazil and the 2 miles around. And from what I understand now, everyone that wants to split the property has to come to Janet, the planning commission administrator, and then she has to approve it and make sure that it's all right. Then it's supposed to go through the board before it gets approved, and then they can go to the courthouse and have the property split. And what's that's done is slowed everything down a lot. I mean, it's nobody's fault, it's just the nature of it, that it takes a long, long time now to get anything through that needs split. And I had, one of the realtors told me they had 2 lots, and they're like, we're not getting a survey to split 2 lots. You know, it was under the same parcel number, so, but they were selling only one of the lots off. And so, yes, they need a drawing, but they don't need necessarily a survey, which is costly, and it's very costly anytime you do that. But we've had a gentleman that was splitting 5 pieces of property, you know, 1 piece of property into 5 tracts, but I've probably had it on my desk for 6 months, waiting to try to get things going and through. And so I'd just like us to look at these provisions and talk about them and decide, is this really something that's worth all of Janet's time and the commission's time? And we're not making any money on it, right? I mean, we're not charging anything. I know in Terre Haute, they charge. I know in Greene County, anytime you want to split parcel down there, it's $500. And all you do is fill out a piece of paper saying we're splitting this property, give them a copy of the plat, and they charge you $500. So I don't want that for us in our community. I would like to rescind this if we can, or at least modify it in a way that makes things better for everybody trying to get real estate through.
First of all, and you've got a copy of the subdivision ordinance there. At the very bottom of the first page there, you only have to go through this process if it meets the definition of subdivision that's at the bottom of the page.
Right.
So a division of any parcel of land into 2 or more parcels, any one of which is less than 5 acres, for the purpose of transfer of ownership, providing that the division or partition doesn't involve any new streets, shall not be considered a subdivision.
Right.
So if there are no new streets, a subdivision's not required. A plat is not
Right.
required. Okay. So it's not division of any lot.
Well, then
And-
someone needs to explain that to the auditor's office, because they're like, we're not taking it without Janet's approval.
Well, I mean,
So,
there's a second part to that. The improvement of one or more parcels involves subdivision and allocation of land as streets or other open spaces for common uses, or as easements for the extension and maintenance of public. The reason for requiring subdivisions to go through the
Right.
platting process is to ensure that the property meets the requirements of the subdivision ordinance concerning lot sizes, septic or sewer, curb cuts meet the requirements,
setback lines, all of that.
setbacks, all of that stuff. And the reason that the larger lots are excluded is because 5 acres is going to be able to meet anything you want to do.
Right.
Divisions into 2 lots or 3 of one piece of ground without having a new street. You know, if the property's already there, it's already got access to a public street, so presumably there's no need to go through the process of making sure that it meets all the subdivision development standards. Those are the things like setbacks and all of that are the development standards.
Right.
And that's really kind of a consumer protection thing, to make sure that the buyer of this lot doesn't end up with something he can't use.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that when it comes to being a subdivision. But they've taken this language and made it to any time you split a piece of property, it has to go through Janet now.
Well-
Whether, like I'm cutting off 20, my neighbor built on me and I need to give them 10 feet of my property. Now all of a sudden, it's like I've got to go through the city to give 10 feet away to my property before the auditor's office will accept it.
Well, Janet just contacted me a week ago about, it appeared to be one parcel at this point, one tax parcel, 'cause
Right.
that's kind of the key.
Right.
That was being divided into 2 that fronted a city street. And I told her that's not a subdivision. It doesn't need to go
Right.
through your office.
Right.
So that was the end of that. Now, I don't know whether that's the case the Realtor was talking to you about, but
Yeah.
in view of the fact that that just happened a couple of weeks ago,
It
I'm
might
guessing
be.
it was.
Yeah.
So, now, I don't know what the auditor's office is doing, but we can certainly, I mean, if the auditor, first of all, I don't know, well, if the auditor is saying that if somebody goes down and tries to record a deed that splits a parcel in 2 and says, oh, you got to get Janet's sign off on this, then, I mean, we could easily give her a letter for that particular piece and say, this is not a subdivision that requires it to go through our office.
Okay, that sounds good. And then that
Um,
will speed things up maybe, but they'd still have to, it's still going to generate a lot of work for you. Is it okay?
Angie, how would you update the legal description?
How would you update the legal
Just,
description?
you know, less 10 feet? I mean, I'm
Yeah.
just curious as to how that would work.
Yeah, you would take their description and you would say 10 feet off the east side of blah,
Okay.
blah, blah, and that's how you do it.
In lieu of the survey, and then the
Right.
legal description would describe it enough to where we could use they could use the pins and find it and whatever.
Right.
Okay.
So it's like, if your lot's 120 by 60, you're saying, I want 10 feet by 120, you know, that kind of thing. And you can take like the GIS and you can do the drawing on there and give it to them, and they accept that. They don't necessarily want a survey, which is so costly
Oh, yeah.
and takes 6 months to get.
Yeah,
So,
that's the biggest problem with the survey, is
Yeah.
it takes a long time to get one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think we try this, see how it works by using, I call it a letter of exemption?
Okay,
You could do a blanket letter, couldn't
and,
you?
See if that works.
okay. Yeah.
I mean, this definition of a subdivision is kind of dense. I
Yeah.
mean, you really have to parse through it to figure out exactly what it means, because
Right.
the biggest exemption doesn't come until the very end, which talks about parcels not involving new streets or easements of access.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know whether the auditor will feel like they can parse through that, or they'll probably just say they want a letter from Janet.
Right, that's probably what will happen.
Let's
It'll
do a
fall
blanket.
back on you and, yeah,
It could be pretty cut and dry though, too. where if there's no new street, then there wouldn't be any point in it.
yeah.
It'd be easy to sign off, I think.
But whether if they do need ingress egress for them, so that would fall under this then?
Well, you recently had, I can't remember the name of that subdivision, but there was recently a subdivision that was right on the edge of the 2 mile. And as I recall, they did not, they had a private road. There were like 8 or 10, Detweiler, that's it. There were 8 or 10 lots in there, and I think all of them, except like 3, were larger than 5 acres.
Yeah, they're giant.
Yeah,
giant
they
parcels.
yeah, they were like
They're
10
like
acres or
18
something.
and 12 acres,
But
and
like,
yeah.
there were 3 or 4 lots at the very back end of the subdivision that were like 2 acres or 1 acre. Those lots drug them into subdivision ordinance. Because it was a private road, there wasn't gonna have to be a new, public road established. And the reason that's important is, and I'm probably talking more than you need from me, but the reason that's important is you want to be sure that if somebody puts in a new public road that's going to be dedicated to the city, that it's built to specs so that the city doesn't have to go out and repave the thing 2 years later, as we've run into in some subdivisions that will go unnamed. And the same is true for the sewer system. You know, you want to be sure that if you're going to have to accept these roads, that they, or at least not accept them. You don't have to accept them if they're not built properly. And what happens is, if somebody develops a subdivision, doesn't comply with the requirements for the construction of the roads, then all of the homeowners in there end up with roads that aren't any good, with no way to get them fixed unless they all put money in the kitty to fix the roads, and or the sewers. And we all know we've run into that. So that's one of the reasons you have these subdivision controls, is so you don't run into those situations where you get 50 homeowners who are just left holding the bag. So that's probably more than you wanted to hear, but.
No, it's good. I need to know so that I can take it back to the realtors and that kind of stuff and let them know. But still, about the ingress and egress, if the lots are smaller than 5 acres, then they're still gonna have to actually plat it, right?
No. Small lots that have access to an existing public street.
Right, but if they want to run it down with an ingress egress easement and have parcels on each side, the street runs this way and the parcels run this way.
Then you got a new street.
Yeah.
And if they're under 5 acres,
Then
it's a
yes.
subdivision.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. I'll take it back to him. Thank you.
Okay?
Yeah.
Thank you, Liz.
Yep.
All right. Next, Kim Meadows, there this evening with an abatement request or abatement calculation request.
So I brought some handouts, I have about 10 of them, I believe.
Thank you. Yep, no, you're fine. Thanks.
Thanks.
So a little bit about the project or what this opportunity is in front of us. Kim and Eltech, we've been in that location, I think we moved there in 2016. I joined the company in 2020. In that time frame, we've grown from roughly a 4 to 5 million a year company. We surpassed 10 million last year, so we've had good growth in the short time since 2020. I think prior to 2016 to 2020, it was fairly steady but level, around that 4 to 5 million mark. We've always had a good reputation with the GEs and Lockheeds and a lot of defense companies with doing development and some prototype work for them. But we were small and we weren't really set up in a way to take on the production runs of these once they went into full production. When I joined Kim, I saw that and I realized we were on some interesting projects, and I wanted to start positioning us so that we could at least throw our hat in the ring to win these contracts for the production runs after we do the development work. I felt like we're putting all the effort into the development side of this, why let that go away to somewhere else? So that opportunity has now presented itself. We were on a project, this one in particular for GE, and it is for a defense-related part or project. And we did the development work starting in 21, and during that process, I kept kind of putting it in their ear that, hey, we want to try to get an opportunity to win this work. We started putting things in place to at least make them think that we'd be capable of ramping up to meet their demands. In December of last year, we started receiving those POs for the contracts for this project. So far, there's been a lot of talk, and I've explained a lot to them what we're going to do to meet their needs. And part of that is, if anybody here has been involved in Department of Defense work or anything, even with GEs and Pratts and all those companies, everything's always coming tomorrow, and then it's 6 months later and it's tomorrow. So you never can know for sure when you're going to get it. So I held off on making too much investments until I had something in hand that was signed purchase order, signed contracts. We spent a year going back and forth where they kept saying, you're going to have to invest, you're going to have to buy equipment, you're going to have to ramp up and expand in order to meet the demand. And I kept pushing back and saying, we're ready to do that. We just need some signed commitments from you guys to say that we're going to get this. So in December, when those started coming through, I've lost my leg to stand on when I say we're not making the investments yet because we haven't got the POs. So this opportunity that we're looking at, you think about in scale, right now the ramp up is scheduled to go into, from where we are today, so these are, we call them engine sets. They're gonna, it's not even available to us as far as what the final application is. It's kind of like not a great kept secret, but we believe it's the new F-47 fighter jet. It's going to be outlet ducts for that engine. We're starting out with, this year we're delivering 2 engine sets. Next year will be 4, and the ramp up goes to 30 engine sets by 2030. Right now we have the ability to produce 2 engine sets a year with the equipment we have and the space we have. So not only have we grown, we doubled our revenue as a company within the same footprint and basically the same confines that we have now, but now we're taking on this project that an estimation of where we would be by ramp up by 2030, we'd be adding another 15 million in revenue to what we're on top of what we're currently at. But there is a substantial cost to doing that. So we've been exploring expanding the facility, and that's what we're here tonight to talk about. We were projecting or proposing a 20,000 square foot expansion. And along with that, We will be continually adding machinery equipment every year to meet the ramp-up demand. And just a week ago, this is typical for the industry, GE and Boeing, because Boeing's also involved in this, came out, visited Kim, wanted to see the investment we've made so far, which I didn't have a lot to show them, but we bought 2 new machines. We spent about $1 million this year on equipment. The question is, where's the new building? But we're working on it. And our next question is what if we pulled in the ramp up from 2030 to 2028? We'll see, but it's a good conversation to have. And these parts, this project, is not just another defense project. It's been labeled, it's DPAS rated, so Defense Production Act rated, and it's received DX rating, which is considered the highest rating of, as far as critical needs for the defense of the country. So that's another aspect here is we've now accepted these contracts. I'm obligated to meet the needs of the growing demand. And things can get a little bit challenging if I'm not able to meet those needs, because they can come in and basically state that you were only going to focus on these parts to meet our demand. So we do have kind of a thing hanging over our head now that I have to meet their demand in the ramp up. There is also the factor that this ramp up to 30 engine sets a year, it is not guaranteed, because if we're not able to deliver, we'll go elsewhere to find a way to meet this demand. So it's a great opportunity in front of us. This is not something that comes along very often to a shop our size. And I've had a lot of conversations with people inside of GE, because I knew there'd be some eyebrows raised when they start looking at the dollar amount of contracts that they're awarding to a company of our size. And we've had a number of conversations about, are we ready to ramp up and how are we going to get there? I think we have a good plan to get there. The challenge is the expense of getting there. The expansion, the equipment. If you look through the pages here, we've got some numbers put together, and with these projects, a lot of times it's kind of you do a lot of work, and there's a little bit of a best guess on what things are going to cost, and even what kind of head count we're looking at increasing. And with some changes just overall in the industry, and probably most of you have seen what's been going on around the globe, we are continuing to see a lot more customers come to us with other parts of Ron saying, hey, we need to ramp up. We have a lot of demand for those who are hardware currently. So I even think that some of this that's here in these pages are probably a little bit conservative on what we're looking at. But I didn't want to overshoot and try to say, I know how these things go, so I always try to be on the conservative side. But I can tell you, we had in here an estimated 12 people added. Just from the county meeting till today, I've added 2, possibly another 3rd that I'm looking and talking to right now. And I need these people, and yeah, the ramp up says so many people per year, but if I can find them earlier, I'll get them earlier. And this project alone is not driving that. It's a big driver for us, but we're seeing ramp up and increased demand across the board for what we produce at Kim. We have an estimate for the building, for the real estate improvement, roughly around $3 million. And about $1.8 million in equipment. That might be a little light, but I'm also trying not to scare our investors too much. And even the increase in payroll, a lot of the headcount increases we're going to need, we need both shop floor and admin type of engineering. This is a pretty big ramp up that we're facing. It's exciting. I think this also takes us from, I don't know who here might be familiar with machining or manufacturing, but when we were a shop that was kind of more, I call it job shop, it's a little bit feast or famine at times. You're winning work, you do the work, and then you're hunting the next win. It's very hard to staff up. It's hard to grow because you can't really plan on what your revenue, what your workload is going to be 6 to 12 months from now. This helps us move away from that. This gives us years of visibility on work, volume, capacity needs. This is an opportunity we really haven't had previously at Kim. We've been getting a little bit better at getting opportunities that we can have a little more visibility on, but we're still kind of riding that line where we're looking for the next big project, or the next big job as we're wrapping up one. I really think that gives a lot more stability and ability to continue to support growth even longer term. I see this as switching over to the other side from a job shop to a more strong, well-established manufacturing system.
Council got any questions on anything so far, or do you have a request for a calculation agreement?
I suppose I do, and I'll preface this by saying this is not my area of expertise. So there was an attorney that is involved on our side that's not here and wasn't here for the county meeting. They've sent me some information here with some breakdowns of abatements. That's, yeah, what we're here to talk about is the tax abatements.
What kind of calculation agreement, what's your calculation agreement that you're requesting?
Here, what I'm seeing here is a 10-year.
10-year?
Yeah.
But am I looking at it right, it's 100% for the first 3 years?
That is what's proposed.
Yeah. And then it starts graduating out over the next 7 years.
Yeah. And part of that, just for some additional context, we're making the investment, but the deliverables of the ramp up on the production is going to take a few years. So we're going to buy the equipment, get it into production, and then the rates start following after that.
Thank you.
Are you done? I don't want to jump into the middle of this. I want to kind of give them some background. If you're done, I'll go ahead, but if you're not.
Sure. This is my second time, I guess, to count the county.
Okay.
So I'm not exactly really sure on this. So.
You haven't done an abatement for a while, and I want to give you a little bit of background. I had some conversations 2 or 3 months ago with somebody representing Kim, and that's something we might ought to explain too. The statement of benefits you have before you is not in the name of Kim. Kim is not currently the owner of the real estate. The owner of the real estate is Turnout Metals.
Yeah, so the private equity group behind us is Turnout.
Yeah, and ultimately it will be conveyed to Kim. That's the reason we keep talking about it as though it's Kim, and that's a name that's familiar to you. But the actual applicant is the owner of the real estate, which is Turnout. So just to avoid any confusion there. I talked with their representative, and initially, one of the first things we talked about was personal property abatement, because there is a substantial personal property component in this. But since you last did a personal property abatement for manufacturing, the taxation of business personal property has changed dramatically to where there is now a $2 million annual exemption for personal property. So the first $2 million of manufacturing personal property isn't taxed in Indiana anymore. Based on where they're at now with their current amount of personal property and this investment, that basically means that at least 2/3 of their personal property will be exempt from any taxation at any point in time. That change in personal property tax laws also allowed for depreciation of the personal property down to 0. In the past, the floor for personal property was 30%. So when I had that discussion with them first, I said, I can't tell you what the council's going to do, but I can tell you that the communities I've worked with have, for manufacturing facilities of this size, been very concerned about giving personal property tax abatements. Just because, I mean, by the time the abatement, you give them any kind of abatement, by the time it rolls off, there will be no tax benefit to the community. as a result of that, I guess, I don't know directly, or maybe they'd never planned to do personal property, I don't know. They have not asked for a personal property abatement. So this is real estate only. They did receive an abatement in 2017, and I went back and looked, and they have more than met their projections from that 2017 abatement. Their head count is up from what they had projected it would be, and their payroll is up substantially from what they projected it would be in 2017. So they have a track record for meeting their commitments. The process that's involved here is they first have to go to the Redevelopment Commission. The Redevelopment Commission makes a recommendation to the City Council. That recommendation is only a up or down. It does not investigate the actual, they don't make any recommendation as to the abatement schedule. That is, are you going to abate it according to the normal schedule that you've used in the past? Are you going to give it some different schedule like they've asked, etc.? The Redevelopment Commission does not involve itself in that decision. Some people question why we do it that way, and I think, for your information, the reason it's done that way is that when that process was started, the City Council and the County Council were getting abatement requests. Abatements are kind of complicated. They didn't always get requests that were properly papered up, and so they were having to put Band-Aids on them and do all kinds of things. So as a part of that change, they established a rule, which the city approved and the county approved, that said if anybody wants an abatement, they have to first go to the Redevelopment Commission. The Redevelopment Commission will charge a fee. That fee will be used to offset the cost of the preparation of a set of documents that is typical for the city or the county, depending on which it is, for the requested abatement, so that the city and the county know they're getting documents that look like what they're used to seeing. Now, the abatement applicant can change those if they want, but the redevelopment will review those changes to make sure everything's okay. That gave anybody seeking an abatement a central point of contact, and it also smoothed out the process for creating the documents. As a part of that, it just said, since we're already messing around with this, we probably ought to make a recommendation up or down on whether we think this ought to proceed or not. So that's what they do. The Redevelopment Commission has met and approved, gave their thumbs up in the most general way to approving this abatement. From here, what happens? You have, in order for you to approve an abatement, it takes two steps. You first give it a preliminary approval, which you could do tonight. You then have to publish a notice, assuming you approve it, publish a notice that you have done that and that you will conduct a public hearing on the abatement. That notice has to be published 10 days in advance of the meeting. A copy of that also has to be sent to taxing units so that taxing units all know that an abatement is being considered. Once those things have all been done, you can come back and take final action on the abatement. You can approve exactly what you did at this meeting or whatever meeting you approve it. You can modify it, or you can change your mind entirely and say, no, we're not going to do it. Okay? That can all occur at the final hearing. Once that is done, there's a form, the statement of benefits form has to be signed by the city, and the city will sign an abatement calculation agreement with the person obtaining the abatement. That abatement calculation agreement basically says that the applicant commits to the job numbers and the payroll numbers that were submitted in connection with the abatement application. If they fail to meet those numbers, their abatement gets reduced proportionally. So if they miss their payroll number by 10%, their abatement gets reduced by 10%. If they miss their head count by 10%, their abatement gets reduced by 10%. And you go by whichever's bigger, whichever's the bigger variance from what was promised. Unless they fail to meet one of those by 50% or more, in which case you can terminate the abatement and reclaim the already abated amounts. So that's the process in a nutshell. In terms of the abatement schedule, the resolution you have before you has blanks in it for what the term of the abatement is. In addition, you will need to attach a schedule for the amount of abatement to be given per year. When abatements first started out, the state published schedules that said, here's, if you're going to give somebody a 10-year abatement, here's the schedule. 100% the first year, 90, 80, 70, on down the line. Okay? If you want to do a 7-year abatement, here's the schedule. And it's 100%, and then I can't, it's like 70%. I can't remember, but and it right on down the line. If you want to do 5 years, here's the schedule. Those were your only options. A few years ago, they said, well, okay, you can do whatever you want to do. You can do 10 years, 1% a year. You can do 10 years, 100% a year, whatever you want to do. But you have to attach a schedule to the resolution that you adopt, and that schedule will get published as a part of the notification to the public of the public hearing, and that will become a part of the statement of benefits that the auditor reviews when they grant the abatement. That's still not the end. The applicant every year has to file compliance with statement of benefits forms that you review to be sure they have complied with the terms of their abatement. They've employed the people, they've bought the machinery or built the building, and they've done the payroll as they had promised. So, probably more than you wanted to know, but I thought give you some context to work with. So.
If you need challenging parts made to go on an aircraft, or you want to figure out a good way to streamline a manufacturing process, I'm the guy. If you want to talk about tax structure, that is not me. So I've kind of had to step in outside my lane. I try to stay in my lane, but here we are. So thank you.
Thank you. Not right now, I don't believe. There's a couple things we can do here. You know, we always open the meetings up to public comment, although do bear in mind that the next meeting there will be an actual public hearing concerning whatever decisions made here. So at this time, I think it would be prudent to accept any public comments, let's say outside of the hearing, public hearing. This would be just a public comment. So, you want to start?
I just want to make my feelings known about considering, I know it's a different schedule of an abatement than what you're used to. So my thought is it kind of feels like sometimes if if there's a thought of precedent here, the precedent means basically that if we do this for one, we're going to have to do it for everyone. But I'd just like for you to consider the precedent could be the strength of what's being proposed, the level of jobs that we're going to receive from this, the amount that it's going to pay, and the quality of the company and what their track record has been. This is a really good opportunity to think about what's being offered here. And so the precedent goes with what's being submitted and not necessarily with we're going to do this abatement for everyone that wants it in the future. I just feel strongly as a consultant to the Redevelopment Commission to put my opinion in about that. So I just wanted to make that clear that I'm highly in favor of making an attempt for this abatement schedule, and I just wanted to say that, that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, I've got some comments on the things that I'd like to make. My name's Trey Adams. I live at 205 North Murphy with my wife Amy Adams. And we have other neighbors here with us, the Witteds that live just up the road from us, and the Schoonovers, and then there's also a family, the Halls, that couldn't be here tonight. They're celebrating a child's birthday that's also impacted this. We're directly neighbors to him, and more or less either directly to the north of the Halls, and sounds like it, as proposed, they would have the building directly to their east and then on down the line. So we're direct, we have property lines that are joined. So I submitted a letter to you guys that outlines some concerns about this, and it's primarily from a property owner's point of view. Everything that he's discussing sounds wonderful. The business sounds great for the community. Improving all of their processes, building new buildings, that type of thing, that's fantastic. But this is going to be literally occurring in our backyards. Okay, they exist there now, but they're talking about a 20,000 square foot facility that would be built on a 1 acre property that literally the Witteds will look out their door and see the side of the building. Okay, so it does have a dramatic impact on our homes. And so the letter, I don't want to go into details about what's in the letter. Hopefully you guys have had a chance to read it. I appreciate you taking the time to do that, hopefully. But I don't want to go into that tonight. What I want to talk about is a little bit more personal. So we talked about who the neighbors are. This is kind of like an accident that we even are aware of this at this point, because Amy sits on the Economic Redevelopment Commission, and they've heard this already. But we really had no other notification by Kim regarding any proposal to do anything like this, okay? It's just by happenstance that we happen to know about this. So, Mercedes Hall, one of the homeowners who couldn't be here tonight, made a comment in the meeting for the Economic Redevelopment Commission that it's ironic that she had to get approval from her neighbors to have 6 or 7 chickens in her backyard due to city ordinance, but these guys are, I know there's going to be a public hearing, but we're considering a much more, significant change to our, property values on, and we haven't even been made aware of it, publicly up to this point. So, in fact, I just met him out in the parking lot for the first time tonight. It's the first time that we've ever met. So, I know Ms. Hall made an appointment with Mr. Davis and spoke with him following the ERC meeting. She's got concerns because, as I said, there's already a building that's owned by Kim that's directly to the north of their property. They want to put a new building directly to the east of their property. She's concerned and asking about the fence, that type of thing. And as far as I know, there's no written commitment to any of that, to make any changes to the benefit of the homeowners that are nearby. So, she made a comment in a public meeting about they have a swing set, they've got a trampoline, their kids are out in the backyard, and they're literally, they've got people that work for Kim that will take a smoke break and they can see the children right there. I mean, they go out a door, and so it's just it's already an awkward situation. So the other thing is that regardless of Ms. Hall speaking with Mr. Davis, there's been no communication with any of the other neighbors. Nobody's contacted us. Nobody's asked about how this is going to impact us. There's been no address of that. So although I have not spoken to Mr. Davis or heard anything about this before, I just want to talk about kind of their role as neighbors to us, because we've lived there for nearly 30 years. The Schoonovers have been there for 40 years. My interaction with Kim has been that, I had an occasion where I'm out in my pasture and their employees are pushing brush up against a fence that borders my property to burn it. And I said, hey, guys, I got a barn full of hay over here that's dry that I don't want to see go up in smoke. Can you not do this? This is not the place to do this. And I got laughed at. So I didn't go to the company. We didn't make a formal complaint. It's just I feel like we have tolerated a lot because of the proximity of their business to our homes. So I'm not trying to litigate a neighborly dispute or, you know, bring that up other than to mention that they, you know, you're talking about, you know, it's whether or not this kind of this behavior that they have or whatever is you know, you're looking at, they're looking at goodwill from the city to do this abatement, and are they worthy of that? I guess is my question, just in that one instance. Regarding noise, their operation is already regularly audible from our property and all of our neighbors' property. The structure's going to set probably within 20 feet of property lines. It's already noisy and it's an industrial operation. It's a situation where if there's, you know, like if I've got a neighbor who plays their stereo at 3 a.m., I can call the police and say, hey, they're being loud, and they're probably going to go and make a call and say, hey, you need to turn it down. I don't have that option with an industrial facility. We live with it. Okay, and that's not with an additional 20,000 foot expansion, square foot expansion. So that's another issue. So there's a noise issue. There's an issue or a concern with me regarding runoff and stormwater and that type of thing. You're talking about a 20,000 square foot building that's a fairly large impervious surface that's going to create drainage issues. My property specifically that borders them is at least probably 3 to 4 feet lower directly on that property line because there's a clay tile wall that's been there for years, many years, probably 70, 80 years. So that water's going to run off onto my property. I have a vernal pond on my property now because it's the natural flow of water. If they put this kind of an impervious surface building right up next to my property, it's going to make it worse. My property is, I believe, considered agricultural, and it is tillable land. We've got a small orchard and that type of thing out there, but I don't want a swamp. Okay, that's not what I'm looking for. So that's another major concern that we have. Property values. So I mean, I don't know how you measure the impact of that, and I'm sure the value of our homes are already somewhat affected by that, but if you jam this building right up next to us, I don't know how you can account for what that does to us as homeowners and what that does to our property values. Murphy Avenue, where we live, was traditionally, it was a beautiful residential stretch. I mean, there were nice homes there. And now we have, like, just adjacent to our home, we have 3 homes that are empty. And with this kind of stuff in the works, it makes you wonder what's going to happen. You know, I'm concerned about the long-term impact of that. So all of us homeowners have paid property taxes at the full assessed value of our property. We've done that for years. We don't get any breaks. We don't get any phase-in. We don't get any abatements. In fact, at one point, we had to go to the courthouse because they were going to raise the assessment of one of our pastures because they thought we had added a building, made an improvement to the property. It was a horse trailer. So, I mean, the county and the state, you guys are going to get your taxes from us one way or another. I mean, that's going to happen, and you make sure that it happens. Okay, so it's just that there's the dichotomy between that and what happens with business. And business seems to get, you know, a lot of the breaks. That's the way it appears. So all of this, you know, you've got the noise, you've got the runoff, you've got the view. What we actually see is not attractive. The property values, the employees, and the proximity to families, that type of thing. And these are not just like policy concerns. These affect us day to day now, and it will be worse if this new building is built, in my opinion. You're going to see increased traffic. The construction alone is going to create, you know, somewhat of a mess for us. So to kind of bring this home, and I understand that it's not a one-for-one, but, you know, we just recently had where you know, they're closing the pool in town. And I know that's not directly related to this, and this abatement is not going to keep that from happening, or is not the reason for it happening. I understand that, but it's part of a broader conversation, and I think it's important to put that into kind of a context. What it comes down to in some ways is what kind of a community do we want to live in? And if we are always favorable to business and not to taxpayers, I mean, taxpayers want to see their taxes stay stable or go down. They want to see their taxes used to build roads. They want to see good schools. They want to see libraries. They want to see museums. They want to see things that improve quality of life for the people of Brazil. Businesses want all the breaks so that they can increase their profit. I mean, this is a private equity group that's based out of Chicago that owns this. This isn't a mom and pop. It's not a mom and pop asking for a hand up. So I just ask you to consider that. It's hard, I mean, I know it's not a one-for-one, but I mean, to me, it's going to be hard to tell somebody, yeah, you can't have the pool open this summer because we can't afford to run it, but we're going to give this business a tax break. And I know I understand it's not a one-for-one thing, but I don't know if the average person thinks about it that way. And at some point, if we continue to favor business to the extreme, then communities become places where people don't want to live because the amenities are not available, because we, don't have the money to pay for those amenities that people want. He's going to find it, I mean, he can talk about 12 to 15 jobs, that's great. Will they all live in Brazil? We don't know. They're going to make millions of dollars doing these parks. But, how much does that benefit the city at this point? And are they all going to move to Terre Haute because Terre Haute's got an open pool and Brazil doesn't or something? I don't know. I mean, I'm just throwing that out there, but it's a concern. So, they've kind of got every advantage as far as a team of lawyers and people that are going to help them fill out these forms and support them in this process because they're about business and they're about making money. But those of us who are impacted by it as citizens are just kind of out here on our own without that same representation. So I bring it to your attention because I think it's important to consider all this in your abatement. I know that there's going to be a public hearing. This stuff will come up again in a public hearing. That's for maybe another time. But my concern also, I was in one of the ERC meetings where they do a vote. And of course they do, as you described, a yes or a no. It's not an approval, it's a recommendation. And so it was kind of like, well, this doesn't really matter because it's just a yes or no vote. The reality is every yes that happens pushes this a little bit farther along. And you guys are being told that, yeah, the ERC said this is a good idea, it's a yes. So you're given the impression that they've made consideration of it, and it's positive all the way around. If you guys say yes, and we go to a public hearing, it's been through a couple of rounds of this now. So as homeowners, we get kind of pushed further and further back in that process. And it's hard to argue that, this needs to be looked at or whatever. So at minimum for me, we need to consider fully what the situation's going to be with runoff, what the situation's going to be with noise, what they can do to try to change the appearance. Are there barriers that can be built to keep us from having to, stare at some of this stuff? I would ask you to maybe table it and at least try to do some investigation into what they can do to make it better for their neighbors. If this was going on in an industrial park somewhere that didn't have residential homes next to it, that would be ideal. I mean, I'm all for it. It's great. I'm not against business. It's just that this has got a big impact. So I just ask you, as elected officials, you guys are going to make a choice about this. I just ask you to please consider it, choose wisely, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have. But I think it's important to consider not just the business side of this, but what this means to the community and to taxpayers. So that's all I've got.
My name is Amy Burke Allen. I sit as a non-voting member on the Economic Redevelopment Commission. I am appointed to that position because I am a current school board member, and I've been blessed with being a school board member since 2010. So 16 years I've been the longest serving school board member at this point, and I'm grateful for that opportunity. There's a direct link between taxes, abatements, growth, and funding of schools, which is, I believe, why the commissioners appoint a school board member to redevelop, because the funding affects our schools. Before I go any further, I do want to thank you for the opportunity to let me address you today. My thoughts are not as organized as Trey's. In fact, I kind of just sketched them, so bear with me. And I did them once I got here and I heard the discussion. One of the things I would bring up a question, is why would a Chicago-based private equity group of investors need a handout? I heard 15 million tossed about from Mr. Davis, and I recall in the redevelopment meeting, Commissioner Vicki Mace said that in her estimate, it would be the loss of about $300,000 in taxes if that abatement was approved. But why would an established private equity group that is not in our state need a handout? That I don't understand. When clearly he has proudly said, we are expanding, he is expanding, he is making a profit, then why do you need an abatement? Why do you need a break? Will he have the money, this private equity group, to expand and build without a tax abatement? They should be able to if they're tossing around the term 15 million. And if they have to spend the $3 million on the building and the 1.5 million, if I'm correct on that number, on the equipment, that means that might bite into the shareholders' profits of this private equity group based in Chicago. So I want to put it from that perspective. Now, the 300,000 that Vicki Mays estimated, how could that be used in our community if they did pay the fair share that we pay as landowners, and you guys all pay? I don't think you get abatements. How would that impact what we can do for our community and for our schools and for our, maybe our pool? I have to admit, Brian's done a fabulous job, and you guys have too, with the improvements we've seen in the last few years within the city and with the money in the budget you guys have. I want to see that continue, if possible. But you guys also are aware, just like we are aware, there's been some new restrictions placed on local funding opportunities that are coming down the pike. It's going to impact us. I think I read in the Brazil Times, Mayor Wyndham mentioned $600,000. Possibly we're looking to find somewhere we need. So why would you give a Chicago-based private equity investor group a break of almost $300,000 when we are already looking for the $600,000? And this is just the beginning, folks, you know that, because we really haven't felt the impact of the change in local funding. And it's going to get a little rough in a couple of years. And I would hate for you to look back on this decision and say, well, we could have, should have, would have, but we didn't. We didn't nip it in time. We didn't change our ways. What we've always done in the past worked. We got to change our ways, guys, because we have different funding formulas and different amount of money to work with. But let me continue on this. I have to say I appreciate the fact that he mentioned that they already have POs, purchase orders, from the DOD. But one thing I think if I understood him correctly, is you really don't accept a PO from DOD or any federal agency without having the capacity to meet that contract in place. You just don't do that. My husband and I retired as directors at the Federal Bureau of Prisons. I hate to tell you that, but we actually had in custody contractors who did not meet the POs for other government agencies. That's just something you don't do. And if you are benefiting from the advice of Chicago attorneys, that is something that it would be wise to consult about. So I want to, having said that, with the POs or with all that was discussed before, there's a lot of what ifs, a lot of moving parts, a lot of unknowns, and that was even discussed in the Economic Redevelopment Commission. There's a lot of what ifs, and this is contingent upon this and that and whatnot, okay? I want to mention also the Boeing F-47. I'm not an expert by any stretch, but like you guys, we kind of follow the news and we kind of follow military developments and so forth. And I follow Boeing myself, actually. It's just something I've done for the last few years. But the direction we're going in is unmanned crafts. We're looking at drones. So although the F-47 is still in the very early development stages, may have its place, unmanned aircraft, unmanned drones are the way to go in military. And we're going to see a possible shift. It's already happening, actually. But that shift might impact after he's already built and expanded. I don't want to, I don't know if I can ask this or not, but do you live in Clay County? Okay. I was just wondering about that. When Mr. Davis spoke to economic redevelopment, one thing he said about those 12 jobs is that, and correct me please if I'm wrong about this, he said that local people, we don't have local people to fill the skills that are required for those jobs. So these jobs are, and he was looking at the time, he was honest. He said, I'm looking all over outside of here, I'm looking, I hope I don't misquote you, throughout the nation, trying to find people with these skills and recruit them. So these are not local jobs. And if we do manage to find 12 people with the specific skills that he needs, are they going to move to Brazil? I hope so. A couple other points I want to make, and then I'm going to wrap this up. Based on what he shared tonight, you guys, with his plans and the impact on our neighborhood, honestly, what he said tonight is far worse than what I've imagined. As far as the ramping up the expansion, the amount of increased traffic, the burn piles, the smell of chemicals and wire, and aborted projects or whatever, waste products, debris, I don't know. The trucks backing in and out at all hours, waking you up, disturbing your sleep. Just the traffic alone. It's far worse, as he described tonight, than I even imagined coming in here, okay? Quality of life, I guarantee you, it will decrease, my quality. You guys, you would feel the same way if you lived where we live. The quality of our life will decrease. Summers, they're not going to be the same. Evenings on the porch, not going to be the same. Or even morning coffee, it's not the same, you guys. It's hard now and barely tolerable. But we work with it to be good neighbors. But quality of life will decrease. Our value of our land will decrease. We're sitting on a little bit less than 10 acres there. And then Bob Pell owns the 17 acres past us that borders our property. Our land value will go down because as this expands, nobody's going to want to move into that neighborhood. And this was one of your thriving neighborhoods that was once the pride of, one of the many neighborhoods that were the pride of Brazil at the time. So I also would speculate this regarding the argument about the details of tax abatement. I imagine that our taxes, as our land value goes down, our quality of life goes down and decreases, I have a feeling our taxes will increase. Because again, someone is going to have to pay for the increases in operation of the government, inflation. They're going to have to still pay to maintain the road that his trucks go down. They're going to have to maintain the water infrastructure that feeds his plant and his expanding plant. And regardless, we're going to have to make sure that we still have enough police and fire protection. So if this Chicago-based private equity for-profit investors, if they are given this tax abatement, which means they don't pay the same amount of taxes or any taxes for a while, that the homeowners and all of us in this room pay, if they're given that, then what you're doing is you're choosing to shift a burden of payment onto the citizens of Brazil in favor of, again, a Chicago-based private equity investment group, Turnout Metals, him, keeping their profit for their stakeholders. At a time where the public in general across the nation is questioning who our government sides with, who our government works for. There are thoughts that they pretty much are working for the good of big business corporations and not the people who make up this nation, or in our case, make up our city and our county. I just think all of that broader picture, like Trey mentioned, needs to be considered. I appreciate you guys allowing us to come to this and allowing us to address you and just at least explain to you how this is going to impact us. We are retired. We adopted Brazil and Clay County as our home in 1998. We could have moved and lived anywhere. We chose Brazil. We love this town. We love this county. We retired in 2019. We planned to age in place. We planned to build a great room just right off the back of our house, where if mobility is a challenge at some point, we can still live here. We have a hospital right up the way. We thought about that when we bought our home. At this point, my quality of life, our quality of life, is going to be so impacted, it honestly is making us wonder. We chose Brazil and Clay County. I'm hoping Brazil and Clay County will choose us. So I appreciate your time. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Okay. Respond to a couple things.
Yeah.
There's some things I did want to touch on though. So first of all, Trey, one of the first things you said about not being notified of the expansion. And as I spoke of earlier, I'm a guy that knows how to make parts and I know manufacturing. This is my first go around with doing a planned expansion. I don't know what the normal protocol is, so I do apologize if I should have done something different on that side and talked to the neighbors. I guess sometimes you get wrapped up into the projects and what's going on there, and I didn't think about the impact of the neighbors around us. I actually didn't think it'd be a negative at all to expand, but that's just somebody from the inside. So that was not intentional. As far as the private equity side of things, that's a challenge. I know we talked about it a lot, or you brought it up a lot, Amy, and I will say that back in 2022, we were under a different private equity group. And I knew they were going to go to market and sell. And I worked really hard because I believed back then in what we were doing and what we were putting into place then. I knew we were at the beginning of a really strong growth stage. So I tried to find local people to invest. I really wanted to make it either ESOP. I tried going ESOP. I tried getting a few local people involved. I couldn't get the funding I needed to acquire the company from private equity. I would have loved to brought it in and had it all owned right here. That would have been my choice. Now I know it's recorded. I don't know if I should have said that. But really, and actually some of my money is involved too, because as part of the transition or sale from one equity group to another, I had to go through that, and I also had to tell them that I was a competing buyer. When I went through that process, any group that was interested, I had to explain to them that I was also a competing party. And this group out of Chicago was the only group that actually thought that was a positive. Most other groups did not think that was positive. And there was actually a group involved that the previous group, equity group, was more interested in, but they were out of Phoenix, Arizona. I didn't see that they had any interest in Kim. I saw they had interest in our customer base. And I campaigned extremely hard to not go that direction because I did not want to see all the hard work and all the people that are over here end up without jobs because they just moved here. I mean, at the end of the day, I only have a certain amount of input, but that was an area that I really stood firm on that, look, we need to try to find somebody that has a vision that at least aligns with what I'm trying to do here and keep the company here. And as far as the private equity side of things, I'm learning all the time on that one too, but the reality of it is I have to run it like it's my own or our own business. You know, when we have to figure out how to fund things, I've got to figure it out. I mean, I've had a couple instances where things occurred and, you know, if I can't, if money gets tight, they tell me to figure it out. Earlier, we ran into a rough patch, and I was calling customers that had past due accounts receivable, and I was begging them to make payments because I needed to make payroll. It was just a cash crunch cycle we got into, so I wish things were a little bit different, but private equity is not, it's not a well I can go to and get funding from. I mean, they bought the company, but the success relies heavily on what I can do, kind of, we still feel very much like we're bootstrapping. A couple other things, I agree with the halls, and I talked with Mercedes. I would like to get something in writing about a privacy fence. And the reason why I want to do that in writing as well is because I want to protect all parties involved. And I want it to be written in. I've talked with the investment group that is going to be part of this expansion plan, is to put a nice fence up there that gives them some privacy, and it'll improve the appearance of the property, both theirs and ours. The property overall, we talked about this at the other meeting, you know, I mentioned I joined in 2020, and since I set foot in that building, I have been on a campaign to clean the building up, both inside, outside. We've painted it, we've redone the roof, we've redone the parking lot. We've cleaned up a lot of debris that was in that back property and made that place look a lot more presentable for a couple of reasons. One, I want to be a good neighbor in general, but two, people that work there, I want you to be proud of the place you go into to go to work. You know, if it's a cleaner, better appearing place, you feel better when you go to work. And then the other part of it is that I knew that we have customers like GE and Lockheed and Northrop, and they're going to fly out and see our facility. And there's three stages where they make assumptions. First one is they look on a map and they see where Brazil is. So they're going to make an assumption of what they're going to see when they get here. The next time is when they pull in our parking lot and they look at our building. And the last time is when they walk in our facility and walk our shop floor. And I want every step of the way, I want them to be surprised that it's a better facility than what they expected to see. So those improvements that we made, yes, they're making a better work environment. Yes, I want it to be a better neighbor to the community, but I also want it to show very well to be able to win these kind of work that we're going after. The contracts, the way they're worded, there is some risk that being DX rated, it can get challenging if we're not able to meet demand. But the way they're structured is, it is up to a certain amount. So as long as we're not sole source, so these parts will be made other places. That's a requirement for the Department of Defense, just for risk mitigation. But the goal is if you can be the supplier that comes through, you get the majority of the award work. If you continually cannot meet the need of the demand, they will continually shift the work balance over to their second and third tier. So we don't have the capacity currently to meet the demand of the POs we've received, but they're awarded in a way that we've got the volume they've projected, and we're going to do our best to meet that, but if we cannot, they automatically start going to other suppliers. And that's my concern, is that as we grow, I want to continually be the supplier that comes through. And so that continues the growth path and continues the good relationship we have with them. I know, or I became aware of the water issue and the runoff at the previous meeting for the county. That was the first time I heard about that, and I don't know if that can be solved with the building, but I also don't know if it's going to make it worse. And that would be up for a civil engineer probably to determine that. I know there has to be stormwater, drainage, handling systems there when the building goes up. The only thing I can say is right now the rainfall falls on a field, which we have no way to redirect that flow of water.
It's tiles. The Colorado Tile Company used to be there. There's the big giant tiles, and it goes up about 2-3 feet. This is what we're saying. So it absorbs, and we still have a water flow when you have an impervious surface of 20,000 square feet. And I think the county or the city only allows, if you can build up to 5 feet, maybe, into a fence line and not 20. I could be wrong about that. But that's going to be running on, and our acreage is going to be affected. And not to, this is not a debate, but just to share the information, I believe in one of the other meetings, the Schoonovers mentioned that they have put literally thousands and thousands into a wall to try to shore it up from that property into their basement and so forth. It's just going to make it worse than it will be paying that cost.
I understand the concern, and I can't factually say definitively it's gonna be better or worse, but
I
it's
think,
really good to
guys,
the water.
from the city side, when something like this, it's engineered, plans are turned into us and stuff, if there needs to be a retention system, or something like that, do we run off, yes. Huh?
Not all mine.
No, it would be, because it's our project. We've done retention systems for a lot of projects here in town. So if that's needed, that, needs to be engineered, something to hold, a retention. Sometimes it's underground tanks, a lot of times, and things like that, something. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, you could increase the flow of stormwater, but there's also ways of retaining it, at an acceptable level.
I was just gonna say, my only concern too is, as long as, I don't wanna fight this fight after it's already happened, because once the water's running on my property, so as long as that is dealt with.
We won't live with it, then we have the attorney fees.
Well,
And
yeah,
that's a burden that is unfair.
as long as it can be dealt with at the outset, that's my.
Well, that's when it has to be dealt with.
Right, but it's like, it's the same thing kind of with all the other things that I mentioned. You mentioned a privacy fence, I know the hall spoke with you directly, but are you gonna do privacy fence around all the adjoining, property lines, or just the hall? Because the Whitteds are gonna look out their back door directly at your building as well, and we.
Two parcels of ours.
Yeah, so is there any way to mitigate noise, is there any way to mitigate, those are just,
I have a direct question, if you don't mind. You mentioned 15 million again, and growth, President growth and profit and so forth since 2020. Can you afford to build? Can you afford to build the 3 million and the 1.5 million in equipment? Can you afford, can this private equity group afford to build this without the hand from the city?
I'm being required I'm borrowing to build. I'm not getting funding from the private equity group, I'm borrowing. And then it's up to me to pay that payment. So that's they're behind us. That gives me a little more leverage to more borrowing power. But ultimately, I'm going to a bank, we're working through, not necessarily just a regular bank, but I'm going to them for putting all this together, and then I'm having to determine, can we support that kind of monthly payment for repayment of this?
But ultimately.
Can I interrupt just a second, please? This is open for public comments, not a question, not a Q&A here. Let's not go down that road if you don't mind, because that's really not designed, just public comments. And obviously, and this, there'll be a public hearing to follow up, but like I say, we really not designed public comments to get into, like I say,
A lot of this could have been resolved next week.
Well, and something?
It'd be great.
I'm not
to
saying
serve
you couldn't now, there's time yet to do that, and I would encourage that, and I agree, Amy, with you, there is maybe I call it come to Jesus meeting or something should happen, I think that would be a good idea. I don't want this to turn into imposition, that's not what it's for.
I'd like to add, sorry, but a couple things that were brought to my attention at the previous meeting. The noise issues, which we don't run a night shift operation. I found out about a truck delivering refill and nitrogen tanks in the middle of the night. I addressed that, called them, said that should not be happening. So as far as I understand, Mercedes told me that she has not heard that truck again. There was no reason they should have been filling her tank at 3 o'clock in the morning.
It's in the early morning.
Excuse me?
It's in the early morning.
So, there's some things I became aware of from that meeting, and absolutely burning. I had told my team previously to stop that, and then I found out they did another one in October or something of last year, which they were not supposed to do. I reissued it, and let all the employees know that we are not doing that. And, you know, I'm getting pushback, but to me, environmental, being good neighbors, just overall, the risk of fire, I mean, I get angry about things like that because it shouldn't happen.
Well, we do have a burn ban that, if there's fires like that, notify me.
And I told
You know,
Mercedes the same thing. I was like, if something happens,
You know, it's gotta be permits, things that they're controlled by the vehicle, so that's something we can address also.
And you can let me know too, Amy. I'll get with the mayor if not.
I do want to say thank you to Brian Davis for being here and answering questions. It has been beneficial. I do appreciate
Well, I
it.
appreciate everybody coming, you know, that's what makes it work. You know, and everybody's got an opinion and it'll be respected.
Because at the end of the day, we're still neighbors. Regardless of what happens, we're still neighbors.
Yeah. No, that's cool. But
I'd like to add one thing else with the employment, and yeah, I'm trying to find people, they're gonna have to move here, because none of these jobs will be capable of being done remotely, but I don't know what happened, like kind of what we talked about earlier, there's a local manufacturing place, I don't wanna say names in case step on any toes or anything, they had a downsizing. I had somebody reach out to me and said they had let go, I think somewhere in the neighborhood, 6 to 8 people, I don't know exactly what's going on, they're local, and I reached out, I told my people, because I'm not from here, I grew up in Michigan, so I've only been here about 6, 7 years. So I don't have a lot of contacts in the area, but I told everybody at my shop, hey, if you guys know anybody that got let go, have them call me, have them come in. I've picked up 2 people, hopefully a third. Because I would rather they could just come right down the street and start where we are, and if I don't need them right now, I'll still can find a place to go back.
Okay, where you wanna go with this now?
I just have a question, if you don't mind. If Kim were to leave, it states on your SB1 form application here that you have currently 46 employees with a payroll of almost 3.1 million, with the intention of increasing that by a conservative estimate that you stated of 12 additional employees of about 811,000 a year. So if Kim leaves Clay County, correct me if I'm wrong, but all 46 employees, along with the 3.1 million in salaries, would leave with it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to clarify that.
Well, you know, the next topic or the step would be, the calculation.
Yeah,
You know, do you want to address that?
you'll have to, because of the needing a schedule, you will need to, maybe the most technically correct way to do it would be a motion to approve an abatement of X years using either the schedule that Kim has submitted or using some other schedule. And, you know, or, I mean, you could have some discussion and, well, that's technically the correct way to do it.
Do you have any additional questions? Brad? Anything?
It feels like we need to decide whether we want to abate or not before we decide the
Correct.
schedule.
Before we go to the schedule.
Or,
Yeah.
yeah.
What do you think, Brad?
Just trying to remember which schedule. Yeah.
No,
This is just one that Luke gave us
that's the standard
from
one.
the state.
Yeah.
I mean, you could motion to deny, motion to
Yeah.
approve with
Well,
schedule.
I think they were discussing the schedule a little bit there, and the difference between the submitted and the standard, so,
Yeah.
is that right? Well, I'd make a motion to approve the abate as requested with a modification to the schedule with the standard calculation that we've used previously. So that would be the schedule the 10-year with the 10-year schedule, with the standard 100%, 95, 80, moving down through, as we've done previously.
Okay, to make sure we're clear on that, the motion by Shane is to award the abatement under the 10-year schedule of 95.
195,
195 and decreases, opposed to, I think the schedule was requested the first 3 years.
This won't be done, but-
Yeah.
That's denied, I guess.
well,
We do have a
We have-
motion on the floor. We have a second.
I'll second.
We have a second by Steve. Do you need any further discussion on this?
What schedule did you say?
It's the prior schedule.
10 years.
The 10-year.
But not
I think that's
100%
the one
first 3
typically
years.
used.
The modified.
That's one that was typically used.
Typically,
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's not 100% the first 3 years.
I get it,
Yeah.
but I only want 5 years, all at
Yeah.
the same time.
Okay.
We can change that the next one.
We have a motion on the floor with the second. Anyone else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Three ayes, is that correct? Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
2 opposed? Motion's carried. At our next meeting, obviously there'll be a public hearing, with more discussion, things like that, but, as it sits right now, it'd be a 10-year abatement. The schedule starts at 95 to 100%, then it goes 95, the gradual step. Anybody got anything else?
Do you have a standard schedule you can give him?
If not, then the only comments I have, I do appreciate everyone coming, your voices are heard here. And,
Shows on the 5.
although not
I didn't see.
in Kim's case,
Doesn't
may not
matter,
got
just
what they
give
wanted,
away.
but there's compromise.
It may be here
there.
in my school.
There was a debate,
I've been-
or an abatement awarded, so. We're done? Anybody got anything else?
No.
I'd just like to thank everyone for your attendance this evening. It's very much appreciated.
Absolutely.
And your input is valuable.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We have a motion to adjourn, and a second.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We adjourn. Thank you.
You're right here.
Yeah.
Now that's 4. So it's just the head of the 5, so it's 100.
I'm recording.
Discuss
Your
this
payment.
calculation.
It's just-
We can do that again, for that thing. We can do the 5
That's
years.
what I'm saying, you know, it's, I do too. I
I'm
know.
surprised at what he
When he
said.
said that, I was like,
At the same time, I have
I was
to
gonna go
feel
into some other
like
things I was gonna
Amy
say.
said, we're losing
I'm not in favor of it.
$600,000 in the next couple of years. We've got to figure out how to
We're
make
losing
that
already on the
simple.
different properties.
And if all we do is have businesses coming in and not have to pay,
I mean, I'm just.
paying the property taxes.
Short 5 years. So if it's not 5 years, to show the impact.
I like how everybody uses that part.